Good morning, my friends. I'm Pastor Ben Hayes from First Baptist Church, Dadeville, Alabama, bringing you our thought for the day on this magnificent Monday. I tell you what, we had a great day yesterday. What an amazing time we spent together worshiping the Father, and it was a great day as we voted in Hunter Baker as our new youth pastor, and I'm excited about that. But today, as we jump into our study, remember, we are looking at 1 Timothy chapter 2, and we're going to pick up in verse 10 because verse 10 helps us to set the context for all of this. Keep in mind, we're talking about the church setting. We're talking about how things were in those days and what Paul expected young Timothy to do as he led the church. But listen to what he says in verse 10. But which is proper for women professing godliness with good works. Now, I'm going to stop there for just a minute and just reset the context here, because in Ephesus of Paul's day, there were strong women all around in the church, outside of the church. Many of these strong women were involved in the pagan worship rituals surrounding the worship of Athena and Diana, those false goddesses that the people enjoyed worshiping because their worship was so sensual and it appealed to people. They would dress in certain ways, they would behave in certain ways, they would do things that were inappropriate for Christian women. And so that's what Paul is stressing here. What is proper for women who want to live godly lives and express that. And that's why he talks about what they wear, how they adorn themselves, the jewelry, all of those things. And his point is that what's inside of the woman should come out and draw people to them so they can lead them to Christ, rather than how they dress and look and behave. And when I talk about behavior, I'm talking about within the church. But women took a leadership role in the society of the Ephesians. And Paul wanted to be sure that these Christian women understood that God has a plan, and it is a hierarchical plan that he has, that we all must submit to. And that word submission is a tough one. We'll look at that in just a minute. But it's God first. God is the overarching umbrella. And then in the family comes the father, the husband, the mother, the wife, and then the children. And it's all a matter of protecting and guiding and guarding and leading as God has intended it to be. So the husband father is that authority in the sense that he is God's leader for the family, and the women are supposed to understand that. And the same is true in the church. As we go through 1 Timothy chapter 2 and chapter 3, we're going to see that God's plan is for men to take leadership roles in the church. Now, the reason that is so hard for us to wrap our minds around in the 21st century is that we have gotten so far away from God's plan. We've lost it in the family. We've lost it in the church. Men have refused to step up and take on those leadership roles. Ladies have done exactly what they should do. They've stepped in because they want their children to be raised in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And many of our churches would not be here today if it were not for women doing that. But God's perfect plan is for men to take that leadership role. Now, with that in mind, listen to what he says in verse 11. And before you get mad and yell at me or yell at your screen, let me explain what Paul's talking about here. He says, let a woman learn in silence with all submission. Now, that sounds pretty harsh. But remember what we said last week about silence? We said that what it means is a quiet attitude, a quiet spirit, not running around like a busybody, not interrupting. And that's really what was going on at Ephesus. When they would have these traveling preachers coming in, these prophets coming in to teach the church, the ladies were interrupting and causing problems by all of the things that they were doing. And they had brought in their pagan worship styles into the church, so much so that they were taking leadership roles in the church. And Paul says, let a woman learn in that quiet spirit with all submission. Now, I know that submission is one of those hard things that we can't wrap our minds around, because we don't want to submit to anybody. We want to be in control. Listen, this word submission is an interesting word. It is a willing submission, not a dominating submission. It is a willing submission, submission given because we trust the person to whom we're submitting. It's like what Paul will talk about in his letter to the Ephesians when he says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands as unto the Lord. See, when husbands love their wives like that, and when leaders in the church love all the people like that, it is not a difficult task to come to this submission. We'll talk about this some more tomorrow. But ladies, I want you to understand, we value your contribution to the church. We would not be here if it were not for you. And I want you to understand that what Paul is talking about is the proper role for women in the church, serving the Lord, serving our families, and loving Him. See you back here tomorrow. God bless.